We've got a double act going on here, so if there's a little delay, it's because Ailey's trying to get some ESP from me about when to move slides on and not. Has anybody come across an infographic before? Yes. There we go. Great.
One yes.
I won't ask you to define it in 15 words or less, but a couple of months ago we were talking about how we wanted to put across our impact this year, and Ailey came up with the idea of having an online infographic that set out really clearly what Action Homeless has been about for the past 12 months. And she's been helped by David at the back, give us a wave, to pull all that together. Some of the outputs from that are around the room, please take a look at it. But one of the most important outputs from it is an online impact report about what Action Homeless has been about for the past 12 months. And that impact report captures some of the headlines, some of the detail from the full report that you've all seen or got on your desks, which is about our trustees report and accounts for the year. And if you have got a tablet or a mobile phone and want to go in and have a look at actionhomeless.org.uk, right on the bottom of our front page, you can do it right now, you'll find a link to our impact report, the infographic, and you can go and have a read through it as I talk to it. Now, I never talked to an infographic before, so this could be quite interesting. It's been a really interesting and challenging year for homelessness in Leicester. It's been challenging for homeless people because we've had a massive reform of the welfare system which has impacted on homeless people and vulnerable people right across the city, not necessarily in great ways, because underpinning that massive reform is a fundamental cut in the welfare budget affecting homeless people in Leicester and Leicestershire. We've also starting to see the impact of the government's austerity measures, both on the local economy and on local poverty indices, and in terms of people's day-to-day lives. And that means that there are all sorts of factors in play in the city and in the county which can contribute to more homelessness. And on top of that, we've had the additional pressure of a local authority which is cutting, and will continue to cut, homeless services. And the impact of that for us is not only just a perfect storm in terms of homeless services, but also a real challenge for us as an organisation that we've had to work through this year. And it's not always been easy, but I think we've come out of it with a lot of real success stories. And I want to tell you a little bit about some of those today. But just beforehand, let's have a look at some of the big issues about homelessness in Leicester. We saw an increase this year in the number of people coming forward for us for advice and support, and part of that was because of those issues I talked about a couple of minutes ago. You know, we had the dubious honour for large chunks of this year of having the worst rough sleeping figures of any city outside of London. Now, actually, Leicester is not the second largest city in this country. It should not be at that level. And actually what causes that, what caused it in Leicester, was bureaucracy. It wasn't about need, it was the bureaucratic failure of, let's say, everybody involved with homeless services not to put that right. We have a significant repeat homelessness problem in Leicester. We don't have such a bad one within Action Homeless, but right across the board, we talk about 40% of people in hostels in the city being there for the second, third, fourth, fifth time. That's way too high. We've got to find a way to bring that down quickly. We're in the new headquarters of Inclusion Healthcare today, which is our homeless GP service. And one of the things that the Inclusion Healthcare staff would say if they were here is that homeless people in Leicester have far higher incidence of poor health and mortality than the rest of the general public. And that's a real issue, not just for Inclusion Healthcare and on the other services that work in the healthcare sector, but it's a big issue for us as well as an organisation. There are 9,000 people currently on the council's housing register because they're in need of a home. And there are currently over 1,000 single people and families and kids in the hostel system in the city. They're the issues that we have to try and tackle. And we've had to do that as an organisation against a background of cuts and welfare challenges and unemployment issues. And our response to it, I think, has been quite innovatory this year. I think we've really started to look at different ways to tackle the problem. As you go through the infographic, you'll see very nice quotes from people that we've had an effect on in terms of touching their lives this year. And I'm not going to go through them in detail, but you can see some of the headlines there, some of the impact we've had, and I'd encourage you to read those at your leisure during the evening. We did some community fundraising for the first time this year, And whilst not all of it's been successful, some of it's been great. So last year, the generosity of local people in Leicester meant that we hit our target of raising £10,000 for our winter appeal, which meant that we were able to keep 4 extra emergency beds open at Mayfield House all year round to take in rough sleepers. And that had a huge impact, actually, in terms of the work that we could do in a responsive way to people who were in need on the street. I won't pick all of these out, but local schools, about a dozen of them, took part in what we call the Big Stinky Read. This was a bit about raising fundraising income, but much more. It was about raising awareness of homelessness within key schools in the city. It was endorsed by David Walliams, and that whole piece of work was raising awareness of homelessness among hundreds, actually, of pupils in the city and county schools. We had 3 crazy people, including one of our board of directors, try and walk the Leicestershire round in 24 hours. Needless to say, they didn't make it, but they're going to try again next year, which is usually what is great about community fundraising, is people get energised and want to make a difference to the services they're supporting. So next year, in July, when people turn out and try and walk the Leicestershire round, we need to give them our support to do that. And the great thing for me is that this work turned our supporter base from 0 people at the beginning of last year to 750. That's just a start for us, but that is an important transition for us as an organisation, for an organisation that didn't have a massive profile among our local community and is now starting to generate one. All of that support helped us in terms of our income and our resources. And this little chart gives you a very quick snapshot of the detailed information that you'll find in the full report. But our resources, our total incoming resources for the year were just over 1.8 million. We spent most of those resources for the year. And if you see just underneath, £89,000 of that came from donations and grants. Over £1 million comes from our housing services. And £742,000 of that came from contract grants from supporting people to deliver the support services that go on in our homes. I can go on, but I think one of the things that's really important for us as an organisation is that these 2 here show that we're an organisation that's actually still quite dependent upon public cash in order to do the work we do. And over the next year and beyond, the Board of Trustees is extremely keen to make sure that the other figures start to balance that out. And that's going to be a huge objective for us over the next 12 months and beyond. Now we can go on. Just to break down those donations and grants, 29,000 came from general fundraising donations, 45,000 came from a capital grant that we're going to tell you a bit more about later, and then the rest came from small grants and the big lottery. So that's kind of our income profile for the year. One of the great things that we did last year was, thanks to a fairly substantial donation from the National Treatment Agency, a capital grant, we were able to remodel one of our houses into a purpose-built drop-in centre and harm reduction suite. During the course of the last 6-7 months of that year, 250 people used those services, and those services included not just drug and alcohol counselling and therapeutic services, but also all the things that we do to help people get their lives back on track, such as finding a job, volunteering opportunities. And in a bit, you're going to hear a bit more about the work that Engage has done over the past year. And quotes like that, I think, really capture what services like Engage are really trying to do to people's lives, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve through the development of services like that. I'm going to tell you a bit more about Action Paint, but the crucial thing from me from that picture is those 3 guys are all people who at some point or other have experienced homelessness. They are part of our partnership social enterprise called Action Trust, of which Action Paint is part of. And last year they did a huge amount of work to improve the quality of our supported housing schemes. And the next slide gives you a bit more information about that. We did some really good home improvements to our schemes last year. We got more grant funding in from the local drug alcohol action team to refurbish one of our supported housing projects that works particularly with people with drug and alcohol issues. Action Trust was massively involved in doing that work and also in improving the gardens, the paintwork and the day-to-day standard of many of our other schemes. And in addition to that work, as a result of lots of partnership discussions we had at the back end of the financial year, Action Homeless was awarded £360,000 from the Department of Communities and Local Government to create an Action on Empty Homes project where we're going to bring back into use 30 long-term empty properties in the city using homeless people as our labour force to do the work and to do the renovations, and then actually to make those properties available on an affordable housing basis to people leaving hostels in the city. That's something that, again, you're going to hear a bit more about in a minute, but is very much part of where we want to see ourselves go in terms of creating employment and independent living for people who've been affected by homelessness. Action Trust has been right at the heart of that, and Action Trust is now a business that's been up and running since April 2011. And just in the first financial year, it was a business that took on nearly 30 people to offer work experience to, and also offered full-time employment to the best part of 15 or 16 homeless people, ex-offenders, and more recently armed forces veterans. And one of the interesting things about that group of people is that they are all people who at different times in their lives can come through our doors as a homeless organisation, and that's why we want to make sure that we offer employment and other solutions to change their lives. So Action Trust has been an important part of what we've been about this year. Increasingly, given all those issues that I talked about at the beginning, we have to, as an organisation, give homelessness a much more prominent voice in the city, and we've been doing that. And for the first time, I think Action Homeless got far more political and far more influential in terms of the issues we were trying to raise last year. Right at the beginning of the year, you remember that Leicester elected its first ever city mayor. Well, we were one of actually the first organisations to start up a process of community debates, and we put all 10 of the candidates to the test, working in partnership with the Citizens' Eye Community News Agency, to make sure that people who maybe didn't get a chance to talk to their mayoral candidates, homeless people, ex-offenders, asylum seekers, got that chance, and lots of the subsequent campaigning issues that came up during the year fed through from that initial debate. Later in the year, we worked with other homeless charities in the city to put together a joint vision for homeless services. And that joint vision, which we published as an organisation, is available on our website, was to act as a, if you like, a spur to the local authority and to other agencies in the city to try and put right some of the problems that existed. The council has actually just published its homelessness strategy, which is, if you like, the response to that visionary document. And I think that whilst there are some good things in it, there are also still some challenges. So that work doesn't stop, and we as an organisation will continue to put up the pressure to make sure that issues facing homeless people are right at the forefront of local policy and local decision making. And our Down Not Out community news agency, who you'll hear from a little bit later, will also play a key role in doing that to make sure that the real voices of people affected by homelessness are listened to by policymakers.